Welcome to our deep dive on Gamay. You probably know her from Beaujolais Nouveau,
Mikey.
but
Yeah.
there's way more to it. We got a book in Portuguese. How
Yeah.
cool is that? And an article with tons of great info.
Yeah, Gamay does have that kind of simple reputation, the grape for those light, fruity wines.
Exactly. So
I love it.
today we're going to dig deeper and uncover Gamay's hidden depths. Like, where does it actually grow best? How does it get those unique flavors? And what's the secret to finding truly great Gamay? By the end, you'll be a total Gamay pro.
You might be surprised how versatile Gamay can be. It's not all Beaujolais Nouveau.
Yeah, I'll admit, I used to think Gamay was just for easy drinking, nothing to age or savor.
That's a really common misconception. Gamay can actually produce a whole range of wines,
Mm.
from light and fruity to complex and age-worthy,
Yeah.
kind of like Pinot Noir in that way.
Wait, Pinot Noir? You're saying Gamay is like Pinot Noir?
I am, and I'll tell you why. Both Gamay and Pinot Noir are super sensitive to their terroir. The soil climate, the whole environment where they're grown, it has a huge impact on the wine.
So they're both kind of like terroir whisperers. They pick up on all those subtle nuances.
Precisely. And when you look at the 10 Crus of Beaujolais, each with its own distinct gourmet expression, that's where you really see the terroir shining through.
10 crusts. Okay, now I'm intrigued.
Mhm.
I have to tell me more about those. But first, if Gamay has this potential for complexity and aging, why does it always get stuck with that simple label?
Well, history played a role for sure. Our article actually mentions how Gamay was historically banished from Burgundy. That's where Pinot Noir is king.
Banished. What happened there?
Back in 1395, Duke Philip the Bold issued a decree. He labeled Gamay disloyal and vile. He said it made bad wine.
Wow, talk about a bad reputation. So if it got kicked out of Burgundy, how did it end up as the star of Beaujolais?
You could say the banishment was a blessing in disguise. Gamay found its true home in Beaujolais, and the granite soils there, they're perfect for Gamay. They give it this distinct minerality and acidity. It really elevates the wines.
Okay, so Gamay landed on its feet. But here's what I found really interesting. Gamay grows in other places besides Beaujolais.
Gamay does have a surprising global reach. It's grown in the Loire Valley, Switzerland, even parts of the US and Canada and Italy. It adapts to different environments really well.
So it's not just a French thing anymore.
Definitely not. In the Loire Valley, they blend it with Cabernet Franc and Cope, which is also known as Malbec. It shows how versatile Gamay is. It can shine solo or as a team player.
It's like this adventurous grape, always exploring new terroirs.
I like that. And remember what we said before, it's a terroir whisperer. The land where it grows is reflected in the wine's flavor.
So let's break that down. How does the terroir actually affect how a Gamay tastes?
Okay, so imagine this. You have Gamay planted in the granite soils of Beaujolais. You get that minerality we talked about, the acidity, and a structure that helps it age. But then you take Gamay and plant it in clay limestone soils. You get a totally different wine. More body, softer, a different expression.
The same grape, different soil, different wine.
Exactly. And climate matters too, of course. Cooler climates give you lighter, fresher Gamays. Warmer regions can produce bolder, fuller-bodied wines.
This is changing how I think about Gamay. Okay, so we talked about terroir. What about the winemaking itself? How much does that affect Gamay's character?
Winemaking is huge. It shapes Gamay's personality. The sources talk about traditional and modern methods, but there's one that really stands out for Gamay, carbonic maceration.
Carbonic maceration. That sounds intense.
It's a unique process. Whole uncrushed grapes ferment in a carbon dioxide-rich environment. That's what gives Beaujolais Nouveau that fruity, light style and the low tannins.
So it's like the secret weapon for those fresh, fun Gamay wines.
You could say that. It really brings out Gamay's youthful side.
Okay, I'm picturing myself with a glass of Gamay. What am I smelling?
Please
Right.
close your eyes and imagine a rush of juicy berries, cherry, raspberry, strawberry, maybe even a hint of plum. Then, on top of that, a little touch of violets and irises. Delicate and floral.
This is giving me spring picnic vibes. What about the texture? How does it feel in my mouth?
Gamay is usually light to medium-bodied, with that bright acidity. Soft tannins so it's smooth and easy to drink, not heavy or grippy.
This is making me hungry. So we've explored the grape, the terroir, the winemaking. Now, the most important question, what are we eating with this delicious Gamay?
Gamay is a great food wine. It goes with all sorts of cuisines, French dishes, obviously, but also Asian-inspired food, lighter American fare.
Okay, specifics. What goes great with Gamay?
That acidity we talked about cuts through fatty foods like a dream. So charcuterie cheese boards, richer seafood, all great pairings. But don't be afraid to get creative. Gamay with sushi, surprisingly delicious.
Now, that's a pairing I wouldn't have thought of. What else?
Roast chicken is a classic for a reason. But Gamay can handle some spice too. Try it with Thai food next time you order takeout.
My mind is officially blown. Gamay is so much more versatile than I ever realized.
It really is. It challenges the idea of what a serious wine can be. It's light and fun. But as we've seen, it can also be complex, age-worthy, and expressive.
I think we've busted the myth that Gamay is just for Beaujolais Nouveau. So much more than that.
Totally. It's got a rich history, global reach, and
Mhm.
awesome food pairing potential. But it doesn't stop there. Our Portuguese source dives even deeper into the Gamay vine itself.
Ooh, I love getting into the botanical stuff. It's like peeking behind the curtain.
So picture yourself walking through a vineyard, rows and rows of vines.
I'm there. Sun's shining, gentle breeze. Ready to learn about Gamay vines.
Perfect. Now look closely at the Gamay vines. You'll see their leaves are medium to large. They have a distinct shape, often 5 lobes, kind of like a hand reaching out.
You see it? What about the grapes themselves? What makes them unique?
The Gamay bunches are usually medium to large and conical, almost like a little Christmas tree. The grapes themselves are small to medium, with a deep bluish-black skin when they're ripe.
Ah, so that's where that inky color comes from, the deep skin.
Exactly. But here's the interesting part. The skin's actually pretty thin and delicate. The real magic's inside the grape. The juicy pulp has all that Gamay flavor.
Like a little treasure chest.
Perfect way to put it. But Gamay vines also have a personality. They're vigorous and early ripening.
Early ripening. What does that mean for winemakers?
Think of Gamay as the eager beaver of the vineyard. It buds early in spring and ripens early in fall. Can be good or bad.
Okay, I sense a story here.
Well, the early budding means Gamay is vulnerable to late frosts, especially in cooler climates. It's a risk winemakers have to take.
So it's a gamble.
There's always risk in winemaking. But the early ripening also means Gamay can be harvested before the autumn rains. So you get drier grapes and happier winemakers.
I see how it's a double-edged sword. Let's go back to terroir for a second. We talked about Gamay loving granite soils. But our Portuguese source goes even deeper. It talks about how specific soils can really influence the taste, like terroir on steroids.
It is, and remember, Gamay isn't limited to Beaujolais anymore. It's growing in all these diverse terroirs, and that leads to some really unique wines.
So let's say I'm blind tasting a Gamay. What clues can I use to figure out where it's from?
If it's from those Beaujolais Crus with the granite soils, like Morgon or Moulin Avant, you'll probably get that minerality, that zingy acidity, and a structure that allows it to age.
Okay. What about those clay limestone soils? What would those Gamays taste like?
Gamay grown in clay limestone is usually a bit rounder, softer, and fuller bodied. Might have a more mellow character than the granite ones.
It's amazing how much the earth affects the wine. But it's not just the soil, right? Climate matters too.
Absolutely. Climate adds another layer of complexity. Gamay from cooler climates will be light fresh, with flavors like cranberry and cherry. But a Gamay from a warmer region might have riper fruit flavors like plum and blackberry, maybe even a hint of spice.
It's like a puzzle, piecing together the clues from the soil, the climate, the winemaking.
Exactly. And speaking of winemaking, our Portuguese source has some great details about the techniques they use for Gamay. Traditional methods, modern approaches. It's all about finding the best way to express Gamay's potential.
Let's start with carbonic maceration. That Beaujolais Nouveau technique. It's like a spa day for the grapes, right? Hanging out in a CO2 bath.
It's a cool process. By fermenting the whole grapes in that CA2 environment, you get those super fruity light wines, low in tannins, that Gamay's known for.
So it's like bottling the grapes' youthful energy.
Exactly. But what about winemakers who want something more serious? A Gamay that can age?
That's what I'm curious about. How do you make those complex, age-worthy Gamays?
For those, they might use more traditional fermentation methods, maybe longer maceration to extract more color tannins and complexity from the skins.
Like choosing between a sprint and a marathon for the grapes. And oak probably plays a role too, right?
Oak can definitely add another dimension. A little time in oak barrels can bring in spice vanilla toasty notes and soften the tannins.
But doesn't oak sometimes overpower Gamay's delicate fruit?
It's all about balance. That's where the winemaker's skill comes in. They need to understand Gamay and use oak carefully to enhance the complexity without hiding the food.
Like finding the perfect seasoning. A sprinkle of oak, but not too much. Speaking of variety, our Portuguese source mentions Gamay rosés and even sparkling Gamay.
Gamay's versatility really shines in those styles too. Gamay rosés are usually light and fresh, bursting with berry flavors, perfect for summer.
Sounds refreshing.
And for sparkling Gamay, the traditional method like they use for champagne is gaining popularity. These sparkling Gamays are known for their delicate bubbles crisp acidity and that delicious fruitiness.
Okay, adding Gamay Rosé and Sparkling Gamay to my must-try list.
It just goes to show how adaptable Gamay is. It can express itself in so many ways. It's like a blank canvas for the winemaker.
Okay, so I'm sold. I'm ready to dive into the world of Gamay. Where do I even begin?
Well, Beaujolais is the obvious starting point. It's Gamay's heartland, with those 10 distinct crus, each one a unique expression of the grape.
Right, those 10 cruises we talked about.
Exactly. But don't overlook Gamay from other regions, especially those that are experimenting and pushing boundaries.
Give me some names. I'm ready to take notes.
In Beaujolais, producers like Marcel Lapierre, Jean Fouillard, Domaine Thélardon, they're known for exceptional Gamays that show the elegance and complexity Gamay can achieve.
Okay, those are going on my wine shopping list. Who else should I be looking for?
Outside of Beaujolais, keep an eye out for Domaine des Potiers in the Loire Valley, Domaine de la Colombe in Switzerland, Taw's Winery in Canada, and Division Winemaking Company in Oregon. They're all doing some really interesting things with Gamay.
It's like a Gamay treasure map. But speaking of treasure, our Portuguese source also mentions some challenges Gamay faces. Things aren't always easy for this adventurous grape.
That's true. There are some hurdles for sure. Climate change competition from other grapes, changing consumer preferences. Gamay has to adapt to survive.
Let's start with climate change. How is that affecting Gamay?
Remember, Gamay is an early ripener, and it's sensitive to heat. As temperatures rise, there's a risk of the grapes ripening too fast, and then you end up with wines that lack acidity, freshness, and balance.
So climate change is like turning up the heat on Gamay.
Exactly. And that can be a problem for a grape that's known for being light and refreshing.
Okay, that's one challenge. What about competition? How does Gamay stack up against other popular grapes?
In a world of big Cabernet Sauvignons and elegant Pinot Noirs, Gamay sometimes gets overlooked. People think of it as simpler or less serious, which we know isn't true.
We know that's not true. Gamay has so much depth and complexity.
Absolutely. But changing consumer tastes are another challenge. People want lighter, fresher wines with lower alcohol. Gamay ticks all those boxes, but it needs to be marketed in a way that highlights those qualities.
So it's not just about making great Gamay, it's about telling Gamay's story.
Exactly. Gamay needs to find its voice in a crowded market, show off its personality to new wine drinkers.
Okay, we've talked about the challenges. But what about solutions? What's being done to make sure Gamay has a future?
Sustainability is key. More and more Gamay producers are going organic and biodynamic to protect the environment and grow healthier grapes.
So being kind to the planet and making delicious wine.
Exactly. And it's not just the vineyard. Sustainable practices are happening in the winery too, like energy efficiency and waste reduction.
It sounds like the Gamay community is really taking this seriously.
They are, and research and innovation are important too. Scientists are studying Gamay's DNA, exploring different clones, and experimenting with new winemaking techniques to adapt to climate change and create even more exciting wines.
Like they're unlocking Gamay's full potential. But what about the big picture? What does the future hold for Gamay?
I think Gamay's got a bright future. It's perfect for today's wine drinkers who want lighter, fresher, and more sustainable options.
So Gamay is like the ultimate underdog.
Exactly. But it's going to take everyone working together, winemakers, sommeliers, consumers, to tell Gamay's story and show off its versatility.
Well, I'm on board the Gamay train. I'm excited to see what this grape has to offer. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, anything else in those sources that jumped out at you?
What I found really inspiring is how Gamay producers are going beyond just adapting to challenges. They're actively trying to make their wines even better.
They're not just surviving, they're thriving. I love that. What kind of things are they doing?
They're playing with different fermentation techniques, experimenting with aging in amphora, and focusing on minimal intervention winemaking to let Gamay's natural personality shine through.
Like they're giving Gamay the respect it deserves, recognizing that it can be so much more than just a simple fruity wine.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting. Gamay is breaking free from those old stereotypes, and it's captivating a new audience with its vibrant personality, its deliciousness, and its connection to its origin.
Okay, so are we ready to dive into Gamay's global journey? Those Portuguese sources hinted at some pretty exciting destinations.
Absolutely. Let's explore Gamay's travels beyond Beaujolais and see how it's making its mark around the world. You know, it's fascinating how Gamay is so connected to France, but it's taken root in some surprising places around the world.
It's like Gamay packed its bags and went on a global adventure, spreading its deliciousness everywhere. Where should we start on this Gamay world tour?
Our Portuguese sources mention a few key spots. Let's start with Switzerland. Gamay has a long history there, especially in the Valais region.
Switzerland and wine. That's not something you hear every day.
It's true. Swiss wines don't always get the attention they deserve, but Gamay's really at home in the Valais. The alpine climate and the sunny slopes are perfect for it.
So we're talking mountain Gamay. That's pretty cool. What kind of wines are they making in Switzerland?
Swiss Gamays have a really unique character. Think bright, crunchy red fruit, a little earthy spice, and this really lively acidity, almost electric. They have a real alpine freshness.
That sounds amazing. I'm adding Swiss Gamay to my list for sure. Where else has Gamay traveled?
Our sources also talk about North America. Gamay is getting more and more popular in the US and Canada. Winemakers are really embracing its versatility and how well it goes with food.
I'm curious about the North American style. What regions are making the best Gamay?
In the US, Oregon's the place to watch. The Willamette Valley, with its cool climate and volcanic soils, it's turning out to be a great terroir for Gamay. The wines from there are elegant and structured, with beautiful aromas of red fruit and flowers.
Oregon Pinot Noir is already so well known. It's cool to see Gamay making a name for itself there too. What about Canada?
Canada's Gamay scene is mostly in Ontario, especially the Niagara Peninsula. The wines there are known for their bright acidity, those juicy fruit flavors, and a little bit of rustic charm. They're super food-friendly, perfect for casual get-togethers.
I'm noticing a trend here. It seems like Gamay likes cooler climates.
You're right, Gamay ripens early, so it does well in places with shorter growing seasons and milder temperatures.
Okay, so we've got Switzerland and North America. Any other stops on our Gamay World Tour?
The sources mention a few other places, like Italy and even New Zealand. They're still early in their Gamay journey. But it's exciting to see winemakers all over embracing this grape.
It's like Gamay's having this renaissance moment, showing up in unexpected places, and making us rethink what it can be.
Absolutely. This global expansion really shows how adaptable Gamay is and how much interest there is in wines that are lighter, fresher, and offer something different.
Okay, so we've seen Gamay traveling the world, but let's get back to its home base, Beaujolais. We talked about the 10 crus before, but I want to learn more about what makes each one special.
The 10 crus of Beaujolais. They're the perfect example of how Gamay expresses terroir. Each cru has its own distinct personality, shaped by tiny differences in soil climate and elevation.
It's like each cru shows us a different side of Gamay's personality, a way to explore everything this grape can do.
Exactly. So let's start with one of the most famous crus, Morgan. Picture rolling hills, granite soils, wines that are powerful and structured.
Morgan. Okay. I'm imagining a Gamay with some muscle, something that can age well. What else?
Moulin Avant is another powerhouse. It's named after the old windmill on top of the hill. The wines are intense complex. They can age for a long time. They often have darker fruit and that distinct minerality.
So we've got the strong, silent types of the Gamays. What about Gamay's softer side?
For that, we can look to Fleury. The name itself makes you think of flowers, and the wines are elegant perfumed, with silky tannins. Imagine delicate aromas of roses and violets, mixed with red fruit flavors.
Okay, I'm definitely adding Fleury to my list. That sounds beautiful.
Another cru known for its elegance is Julienus. The wines are refined, balanced, with subtle spice notes. People say they have a feminine quality, a kind of graceful charm.
It's amazing how one grape can have so many different personalities.
And that diversity is part of what makes Gamay so exciting. It's a grape that begs you to explore it, a new discovery with every bottle.
So we've talked about Gamay's terroir and its different expressions, but let's not forget about the people behind the wines, the winemakers. Our Portuguese sources mention a few key figures who've really shaped how Gamay has evolved.
For sure, winemakers are so important. They bring out Gamay's best qualities and show us what it can do. One name that stands out as a true pioneer of natural winemaking is Jules Chauvet.
Jules Chauvet, tell me more.
Chauvet was this visionary winemaker. He believed in minimal intervention, letting the grapes speak for themselves. He was all about traditional winemaking techniques, organic farming, and a deep respect for nature.
So he was like the original Gamay whisperer.
Exactly. He just understood Gamay and its potential. His philosophy has influenced so many winemakers, not just in Beaujolais, but all over the world.
What were some of those traditional techniques he used?
One of his main principles was using native yeasts for fermentation instead of commercial yeasts. He believed in letting the natural yeasts in the vineyard and winery do their thing. That gives the wine its unique character and sense of place.
So it's like trusting nature, believing that the grapes know best.
Exactly. Another important part of his approach was using minimal sulfur. Sulfur dioxide is a common preservative in winemaking, but Chauvet thought you should use as little as possible so you don't hide the wine's natural aromas and flavors.
It's all about letting Gamay express itself.
Precisely. And his legacy is still inspiring winemakers today, those who are pushing the boundaries and finding new ways to show off Gamay's potential.
So we have Jules Chauvet to thank for this exciting new era of Gamay.
Absolutely. You can see his influence in the work of so many modern winemakers. They're making incredible Gamay wines, focused on minimal intervention and letting the terroir shine through.
Okay, I'm officially inspired.
Yeah.
So we've covered Gamay's global travels, the Beaujolais Crus. We've even met one of the pioneers of natural winemaking. Anything else we should know about Gamay before we wrap up?
I think it's important to remember that Gamay is still being rediscovered. It's being redefined. There's so much excitement and experimentation in the Gamay world. Winemakers are pushing boundaries and challenging what we think this grape can do.
So the story's still being written,
Yeah,
and we're all part of it.
exactly. That's what makes Gamay so interesting. It's a grape full of surprises, a whole world of flavor waiting to be explored.
I love that idea. Gamay's story's still being written. It's not stuck in the past. It's always changing and evolving, just like the grape itself.
Exactly. And that's why you got to be open-minded about Gamay. Don't let those old stereotypes hold you back.
So if someone's only ever had Beaujolais Nouveau, how would you convince them to try other Gamay wines?
I'd tell them Beaujolais Nouveau is just the beginning. It's a fun intro, but there's so much more to discover in other Gamays.
Like what kind of stuff? What are we talking
Yeah.
about here?
Imagine a Gamay from one of those granite crus in Beaujolais, like
Mm.
Morgon or Moulin Avant. You get those earthy mineral notes with ripe black fruit and a touch of spice. Those wines can age for years and get even more complex over time.
Okay, so those are for the serious wine geeks, the ones who love terroir and aging. What about Gamay for just everyday drinking?
Camay's a rock star for everyday wines, too. It's light, refreshing, and super food-friendly. You don't need a special occasion to enjoy it.
It's like that friend who's always up for anything, weeknight dinner or a fancy party.
Exactly. And don't forget about the rosés and sparkling Gamays, perfect for summer or anytime you want something bubbly and fun.
Okay, we know Gamay is versatile, but why should people choose Gamay over other grapes? What makes it stand out?
Well, one thing is that Gamay really shows off where it's from. It's that terroir whisperer we talked about. You can taste the soil, the climate, the winemaking in every sip.
So it's like a taste of place, way to connect with the land.
Exactly. Gamay also has this amazing vibrancy, a freshness and energy that's really appealing. It's not heavy or tannic, just pure delicious fruit.
Like sunshine in a bottle.
And then there's how well it goes with food. The bright acidity and light tannins make it perfect for so many different cuisines. Spicy Asian food, hearty charcuterie boards, it can handle it all.
We talked about some yummy pairings earlier. I'm already planning my next Gamay dinner party.
It's hard not to get excited about Gamay. It brings so much joy to the table.
Okay, so we've covered Gamay's versatility, its terroir, its food pairings. What about the future of Gamay? What trends are you seeing?
I think sustainability is going to be huge for Gamay producers. People care more about the environment now. They want wines that are made with respect for the planet.
And Gamay seems like a good fit for that. We talked about those organic and biodynamic practices and sustainable winemaking.
Exactly. Gamay is also getting more popular with natural wine fans. Those minimal intervention wines with native yeasts and low sulfur, they're attracting people who want a more authentic wine experience.
It's like Gamay is riding the natural wine wave.
And that's really cool. It's taking Gamay to a whole new level, introducing it to new people.
So what's the final takeaway for our listeners? What do we want them to remember about Gamay?
The most important thing is to be curious. Be adventurous. Don't be afraid to try different styles and discover everything Gamay has to offer.
Go beyond Beaujolais Nouveau. Embrace Gamay's global journey.
Exactly. And don't forget to share what you find with others. Spread the Gamay love.
I love it. Cheers to Gamay, the grape that keeps on surprising us.
Cheers to Gamay.